then
I'll
she
take
wins.
it for you.
So yeah. So all right. So we can talk a little bit about that then. When can you think of events with your like as a mother that you've had to do that, where you've had to do battle with your children as they were children? So just help me out here. So like when any of them were 5 years old, what do you
and decide not to do
well,
whatever.
like, did you ever get into it with them as 5-year-olds? Share with me some kind of story of any of
I don't
these
think
kids.
so, because as I remember people then, the mother was the boss, and you didn't have that much consideration for what they wanted. You knew what was best, and you told them, and you just sort of said, yeah, no, we have to do it like this.
Yeah, but they didn't listen to you every time.
No, sometimes they fussed about it a little bit.
Right? So then what do you do?
Too bad.
Give them
It's
give
too
them the,
bad.
give them
I
the belt?
said, as
Give them
I
the back of your hand?
Give
no,
them the
I did
switch
not
in
do
the
that.
backyard.
The switch?
Make them go get their own switch off the.
Did you do that?
Yeah, I did that once.
So wait. So
Because I had to do it as a child, I remembered once, and I thought that was
That was
really
a punishment,
bad,
a
and so I
usable
thought,
punishment.
when my child didn't, I don't know what it was that I was disobeyed or talked back to, or
Yeah.
something like that. And you were about 7 or 8.
I don't have any idea.
You think, maybe not, I don't know. But I remember I said, okay, I'll just do one of Mama's old tricks. And I said, you just go out there in that little tree right in front of the house and get me a switch and bring in here. And that is a bad punishment. When you've got to go pick out something to be hit with.
right.
And so, but I hadn't ever experienced it, and I said, go get it. So Linda went out in the yard and picked a little switch. We took the little leaves off of it. It was little. And she brought it in, and I don't remember doing the act, but I switched her little legs from below her knees.
Right.
And she cried, and I thought, I've done this. And then when she walked, don't get me emotional. and I saw those little red marks on her legs, and I knew I had done it.
Right.
And I thought, that's it. I'll never do that again.
Right.
And you could see the marks for a little while.
Like the scarlet.
Not the next day.
Thank God.
Oh,
We had kids come to school before with a handprint on his face.
oh no.
One.
No.
I think it's funny, like in 2 of the stories that you've told me, where you have the one where was it your sister spanking you?
Yes.
Was that it? Right.
Yes.
And then there's this one where where my mom got the switch, and then
Yes.
you switched her. And both of them, they're traumatic for everybody involved. It's not, in the story with your mom and your sister, nobody liked that. It was terrible for everybody involved, and it's funny.
Well, it only
Interesting.
happened once, so I guess we learned from it.
Right.
And so if I ever spanked them again, it would have been with my hand through their clothes.
Right. What would she have done? So you think she was about 7 years old at that point?
Yeah, I think it's...
What would she have done to push you after by the time she's 7, you have how many other children at that point?
Well,
How far
I have Libby and Trisha then.
Right, so you're dealing with 3 young girls at that point. I mean, just with Addie alone, by the time she turns 5, as she's 5 now, I'm not gonna make her go get her own switch or anything, but you know what I mean? There's stuff that happens where you're that pushes you to the end of it, and you're like, what am I gonna do in this moment to rectify this? How am I gonna get this little bee to do what she's supposed to do? So it's funny to me, it's interesting. So you got all the way up to the point where she was 7 years old, and you hadn't gone to those ends yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
So what would she have done that would have made you been go get a switch from the yard and?
Yeah. I wish I could give you the specific detail, but I don't. It was either she didn't do what I told her to do after I had told her a couple of times, or she told me she had done it when she hadn't. I don't know what it was, but it was certainly nothing big.
Right. It's just, yeah. I guess.
But I know we were, I was the disciplinarian, and but they minded. The children had to mind their parents, whether
Right.
they liked it or not.
Right. I feel like that's how it should be and how it's supposed to be now, but like even so, as you know, 5-year-olds not always going to listen, right?
Well, you give them so many choices now.
All right, so talk about that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, like we made the decision what they should do, and I'll carry the unicorn and you will do that. And
Right.
there was no like, or do you want to do it? We didn't consider the child.
You were just like, we just do this. This is
It
just
was,
it.
I'm in charge of this,
Right.
and we'll do it this way.
Right. So yeah. So for me, it's like I get that. So that part of it is, you know, you want to. I just want to get out of the house, be done with all this nonsense in the morning. I will put the unicorn in the bag. I'll carry all of your stuff. You just go to the car. I'll take this. Just
Yeah.
It's easy. You're done and all that. But then I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but some part of me is like, maybe now is a good time at 7:30 in the morning to teach my 5-year-old daughter a lesson in responsibility. If you want to bring your stuffed animal to school, you need to be able to put it in your backpack and do all of this, and you know what I mean? Which is, I mean, in hindsight, it's like, just take the unicorn in the car, man. Don't deal with all of this stuff. But part of me wants to do that.
But you didn't have 2 other children to consider whether you had to take them with you.
True.
Because you didn't have another driver and
True.
you all got to get in the car.
It
and
makes
go.
a difference only having one child to contend with in the
lot.
morning. That's a really good point. So it maybe in my mind I'm like, maybe I do have the ability and the leisure in this morning to teach her a lesson in responsibility. And then immediately after I say it, I'm like, why did I do this? This is a poor
Just let
decision.
it happen.
Right. Just let
Yeah.
like she's gonna remember this as an integral moment in the development of her responsibility. Any other things that we kind of just went off on that one? That was fun. Any other any other parental tips for dealing with a 5-year-old that you have or that you can think of, or any differences like you mentioned, giving her the choice versus just going and doing whatever you need to do. You know what I mean? Like any other things that you can think of? Any other criticisms of kids today or of parenting today that you see differently?
I don't know. I thought I had good kids. I remember
Had
taking them.
good kids. No, they're not good anymore.
No, I won't say that. They're wonderful.
Okay.
And I'm getting a look right now.
Yeah.
But I remember taking my kids when my husband would be gone, and I would have the car and the kids to take care of, and I would have to say go to the hospital and for appointment. Well, I didn't have a babysitter, and so you take your kids with you when you go. And I can remember having them sit in the waiting room, and while I went in for the appointment, when they were 3 and 5, and I knew they would be good, and they were. And I would come back and they would say, "Your kids were so good." They did. And I said, "Well, I told them to sit there, and they sit there."
Right.
And they didn't sit there because they were afraid of what I would do. And Linda shows me the switch.
So
you taught them to do what you said, to respect older people and teachers.
How do you
I feel
think
so bad for the teachers now who don't get the respect
Right.
from the children or the parents.
So as as a 4, a 3, and a 5-year-old in that sort of kind of situation, how do you instill that sort of thing? You know what I mean? How do you get them to how do you teach them about respect for grown-ups or for teachers or for parents?
How do you teach that? Just be positive and follow through on what you say you want to do.
Right, which is the thing with the unicorn that I was telling you about. I wanted to follow through with that, right?
And you
I
did.
didn't want to give in on that lesson that I was trying to teach this morning. So maybe I did do the right thing. Maybe it will stick there for longer.
I didn't know I was teaching when I was doing that.
Right.
It didn't occur to me that I'm going to teach you a lesson.
Right. I think there's a lot of overthinking nowadays. At least for me, there's definitely a lot.
I see that,
Yeah.
but then I keep my mouth shut about it, and you're asking me now.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So what else? So like you also, I think it's interesting that you leave a 3 and a 5-year-old in like the waiting room of a doctor's office. Not only do you assume that they're going to be good, but also that nobody's going to come up and steal them or anything.
Never a thought of that.
Yeah. Wonder when that started happening. Like at what point in the past, 50 or 60 years did you start to did society or did our environment start to be
Well,
more aware of that?
I remember the first kidnapping that was Lindbergh's baby.
But that was a long time ago. That was before.
That's the first one, and only one that I knew of.
Mm.
I never heard of a local child being kidnapped or abused.
Okay. Can we switch gears a little bit
Yeah, let's.
and talk about? So you're talking about yesterday when we were driving back here, we were talking about Annapolis. Like you guys had just settled in Annapolis, like in what's that? Late 40s at that point.
Yes, early 50s.
Yeah. So talk a little. That's kind of what I'm curious about. Talk a little bit about. You mentioned that Annapolis was like a small town back then.
Oh, yes.
Now it's totally different.
Yeah.
But so like talk about what it was like when you moved here, because you lived in DC, you lived in San Diego, and then you came here and you hadn't really been here before, right?
Right.
So talk about that a little bit. You moved into the Quonset huts? Is that what they're
We
called?
lived in the Quonset huts.
Yeah.
And the Quonset huts were where the
Right.
where the stadium is now.
Right.
And I walked, and I could walk downtown to the Naval Academy on what is now Road Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a small town, almost nothing on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned last night.
Yeah, it was. I feel like it was more just like, I guess, working class, or there certainly wasn't like all of the restaurants and shops and stuff. It was more
There
practical,
were a couple of restaurants and dress shops, a couple of dress shops, shoe stores, and a grocery store. I'm talking about on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you remember where the grocery store was? Do you remember?
it was, I remember it was on the right side of Main Street,
Right.
maybe halfway up.
Do you remember any of the other stores, or is there anything that has? I'm trying to think.
That you know of now.
Yeah, that is.
The Slamas, did you know the Slama boys in school?
Uh-uh.
Dave and I were talking about that, Dave Slama.
Uh,
They had Slama's shoe store
yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
I know I bought my shoes because I took a narrow quad. They didn't have many
Oh, they
shoes.
didn't have your size. I see.
A narrow.
Right.
And I would go to the May Company in Baltimore.
Had to make
buy
a
my
special
shoes.
trip
There
to
was
get your shoes.
one shoe store here that you could buy a narrow shoe, and if they didn't have it, you had to go to Baltimore.
Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah.
All right. So, what other sort of like Annapolis-y kind of stuff? I mean, like, I guess what are the other differences? Or you've seen that you've lived here since. Once you moved here, that was it, right?
Yeah.
So, well, let's back up. So, like, how long were you guys living in the Quonset huts?
That's not quite right. We didn't live here constantly from then.
Oh, okay.
we lived here for till Lib was 2,
Mm-hmm.
and we Jack got duty changed then, and we had to go to we went to Florida.
Oh,
for
that's
a year.
right. That's right.
We lived in Florida and Tricia was born in Florida, and we were there for a couple of years.
And
It was
then
great.
and then back to Annapolis after
And
that.
then back to Washington
Back to
for
Washington.
a year.
Okay.
And then while we were in Washington, we were coming back and forth to see Jack's parents, and they offered us land to build a house.
Mm.
And that put an end to our thoughts of going back to San Diego to live.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what we had planned on doing.
And that was that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit before we go too much further with all of the travels and things. So back to when you guys had moved here and you were living in the Quonset huts. So at that point, it's the two of you and then Linda, my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what was that like? How long were you guys living here? I mean,
At that time, we lived in the Quonset huts for till Lib was 2. I have to go by Lib because it's the rounded off number. She was born in 50.
right, it makes it easier.
And so I was born in 20, and I can calculate from that.
Okay.
So we lived there for a few months, and we found another house and moved to Boucher Avenue in Eastport. And we lived there about a year, and we found a better house on Jackson Street in Eastport.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were there, we got duty to Florida.
Okay. So what year is that when you got that?
In 52.
52, right, when Linda was 2. Okay.
And my mom visited us while we were living in
Wow.
Boucher Avenue.
What was that like?
It's the first time she had ever flown, of course.
Right.
And she came and stayed with us for a couple of weeks.
How old do you think she was around that time?
She was 70, maybe 75.
And had she seen her grandchildren? Had you guys been through there or
She
been down
had
there?
seen them when they were tiny babies.
Okay.
And at this time, Liv was about 2.5, so, and just had those, only those 2.
Right. So she just came up by herself, flying in a plane.
Yeah.
Never done that
They
before.
put her on a plane down there, and we met her at Washington National Airport.
Right.
And that was quite an experience, and it was for her because it's the farthest away she'd ever been from home,
Right.
and had never gone many places, you know. She was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. So during that time when you had 2 little kids, like what was life like? What did you do? How often, like, you guys get to go out or do anything? Like, it seems like, you know, back when you were living in DC, before kids were born, before you were married, it was like, excitement of my youth, you know what I mean? And it's like everything is fun and new and exciting, and then now you settle down and have more responsibilities.
Completely different.
What did that feel like? Did you feel like the weight of, I have these kids now and we have this life and I have to be responsible? I mean, not that you weren't previously, but did you feel that difference? And
I did feel that.
what was that like?
Well, it was, I missed some of it.
Yeah.
We never went to movies.
Right.
We never went anywhere. We had no babysitters.
Right.
And your life was taking care of the children.
Right.
And I learned to sew, and I made their clothes, and that was fun for me to sew. And but when let me see, when I had Linda and in the Quonset hut, and I was bored with staying home with her and not talking to anybody else, you know. And I decided to take her to a dancing class. So I would take once a week, I would have the afternoon to go and take her to dancing class.
As much for her as it is for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she got out, and we did have Granny, Jack's mother, would come, and well, I was keeping her anyway because she had a bad leg that she had to stay in bed for 6 weeks for it to heal.
Mm.
And I kept her at my house and took care of her.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
To do.
And she was crocheting and making things, and while she was in bed, and I had a new vacuum cleaner, and my Electrolux.
You remember that?
Yes, and I vacuumed under her bed, and she had dropped the crochet, and I unraveled the complete thing in the vacuum cleaner. That was the end of her crochet.
Did you lie about that one too? Or did you
I
fess
said
up?
it did it itself.
Right.
Who said that?
So wait a second. So something like that. I mean, did you what is the level of stress when that happens?
She was very sweet. She had.
She was okay with that.
While we lived there, I took Linda and went to visit my parents, my mother and my family, and we flew down and back. And when I got back, Jack had in the Quonset hut. It's pretty sparse, and he had put in a new linoleum floor. It was really nice. That had a new kind of finish that you put on it that was long-lasting and shiny. But it was nice to play on.
Right.
Good for that.
Right.
And
That's a nice little treat to come back to. It seems like you guys did a lot of. I don't know if maybe it's because just of being in the service, but you feel like you guys traveled around a lot. I mean, obviously, if you're stationed somewhere, you're moving around, but even flying down, in 1950 to go, or earlier, to go visit your mom, that seems, I don't know, it seems out of the ordinary for that time. Is that accurate? Did a lot of people travel around like that?
well, if you were in the service, you went where they told you.
Right,
And
but
that
when
was
you went down
all-
to visit your family.
Yeah, I went by myself, and
Yeah.
he stayed here and worked.
Right.
Yeah.
That just seems to me like an extravagant kind of expense.
But I had to see my mom.
I'm not saying you shouldn't have done it. I'm just saying it seems,
I don't remember how much it cost.
I don't know. I guess, yeah, you do what you have to do to go.
He
see your family.
also, our yard was just dirt, and he bought sod, squares of grass, and came and he fenced in our front yard and put grass in there for it. And it suddenly was a yard. I was impressed with that. I'd never seen sod before.
Right. What else about those first couple of years in Annapolis, living down there?
Well, back in, not necessarily in Quonset huts, you don't need to know any more about that, right?
I don't know. Do I? Is there any other
Well-
stuff? You talked about the building with the sod and the linoleum. Is there anything else that you want to talk about there?
Well, Liv was born while we lived there, and when in the middle of the night when I was in labor, and Jack had to walk down the block to the phone booth. We didn't have phones in there, and call the hospital and tell them that we were coming in, so they expected us. And then he dropped me off and came home.
Where's Linda at this point?
Linda was there. I guess we told a neighbor that we were going to be gone, or she came down. We did know the Seuss's in there at that time.
So wait, she was with the neighbor?
We either had a neighbor come in, we would do that, come in and
Right.
while she was little, or you did take her to the neighbor.
Right.
And I remember she was there.
So then he drops you off at the hospital and you're going to go give birth, and then he just comes home?
Yes, he did.
And then what's he doing at home? Just hanging out?
Well, he takes, what does he do at home?
Yeah.
Well,
While you're at the hospital
Yeah.
giving birth to your second
Linda.
child.
he's taking care of Linda.
Okay, that's what I was asking. So
Yes,
he
he-
comes, so he's
Yes,
watching.
and he would bring her to the hospital. I remember looking out the window because you couldn't bring them inside to the nursery. And I remember seeing her out from the second floor down,
Mhm.
with her little pigtails. He had made braids for her, and had never seen that before.
Oh, nice. That is a good sentiment.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have 2 kids now. Anything else? Like what? So I mean, after so you have your second child now.
I'm in the neighborhood now.
You're settled in.
Yes.
Do you feel more
There
at
are
ease?
many others just like me
Mhm.
in the same neighborhood.
Right.
And though usually officers and enlisted men do not live together in the same places, they did there. Because we were in the front part of the Quonset hut, and then there was an officer behind us. And they liked to come play, their little kids liked to play safely in my little yard.
All right. That's funny. Right.
And we would go down to a neighbor's and have a drink or have dinner sometimes.
Would you socialize with people of like different ranks that were living?
Yes, we did in that place. We
Yeah.
did.
That's interesting. It's like, I guess like children are a big equalizer,
Yeah.
and proximity too, just being near those people.
And Jack's duty was on the Rihanna Mercedes, this ship. It was an old ship from back in, I think it was built in 1897, because that was the year my mom was born.
That's
And I
crazy.
remember that when I looked it up.
That's crazy.
And it was right at the Naval Academy, and his job was teaching a class there.
I was gonna say, what kind of what kind of stuff did he have to do?
Technical stuff about boats, ships.
Ships.
Yeah. And later, when he was worked at the experimental station, then after we moved away and came back, when he was there as a civilian, and they did work on underwater motors and for submarines or.
So like he goes away for the day, teaches his classes, right? Comes home, you've been with the kids all day.
Yep.
What's home life like? Like you get home, it's like, how was your day today? How was your day today? What's for dinner? But was it
What's for dinner?
Yeah, so it wasn't how was your day, it was what's for dinner.
It's what's for dinner.
Okay.
And then you talked about everything else.
What was
But my job was to take care of the children and the house and the shopping, and he went to work and came home, and I had dinner ready, and we got a television
Okay. When
while
did
we
that
were
happen?
there.
At the Quonset huts?
At the Quonset hut, we had a television, and we had 2 channels. And if you wanted to change channel, Jack had to go outside, and the channel aerial, I guess you would call it, was on the roof. But
What?
and he had to go out and turn something. I never did that. And then we could see the other station.
That's crazy. Okay, back up a second. So, all right, so since we're talking about it, we can talk about the TV thing. What kind of TV programs are on these 2 channels?
Fabulous.
Okay.
Anything that was on there was fabulous.
Right. Like what?
But we liked the comedy shows. We had Amos and Andy. We had Lucy. We had Fibber McGee and Molly.
Don't know that one.
Of course not. And we had the Jack Benny Show. And then a little later, the Amateur Hour with Major Bowles.
Have you seen
That
any?
just came to me.
Have you-
Who's Major Bowles?
Have you seen any of these shows since? Like, when was the last time you watched any of these?
Once in a while, there'll be an old clip. They'll show you of it, and it's interesting. And the movies, the old movies,
Right.
old cowboy movies, which I did not like, but Jack loved. And